Hi, everyone, and welcome to the New Earth Lawyer podcast. My name is Geraldine Johns-Putra. I'm your host. I'm a lawyer based in Melbourne, Australia. Today, we have with us from Florida in the United States, Kelly McGrath. Kelly McGrath is the owner of Kelly McGrath Law, PLLC. It's a non-litigation law firm. It focuses on business and family law mediations, restorative justice cases, and collaborative divorce. Kelly has founded the Florida Restorative Justice Association in 2013. It's a group that supports the use of restorative justice in Florida. She's got a professional certificate in trauma and resilience and considers herself to be a trauma-responsive lawyer. She's also the owner of a separate business called Life After All. It's a program that supports post-divorce or widowed women, and it's built around a faculty of professionals who provide guidance for healing, renewal, growth, and rebuilding. So Kelly is one of our collaborative practitioners, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the podcast, Kelly. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here.
So I think I'm going to start with the question of how did it happen? How did you go from being a Florida attorney to someone who's basically into collaborative law, restorative justice, which I'd really like to get into, and running this business of healing on the side? Or
I
interest.
started my journey as a kindergarten teacher. So I've always had that feeling of care and support and guiding people through and learning and growth, and decided to go to law school because I felt like I had more personal power and autonomy over how I practiced that type of guiding and healing, and knew that I didn't really fit into the law school world, at least in my class, which was very competitive, and I was very collaborative. Did find my tribe there, though, and graduated. And then I started working for the state. And what I found, I was just doing transactional work for the state. And people would come in my office and talk to me, close the door, and talk to me about the issues they were having, the concerns they had, their deeper needs at work and things like that. And I knew that there was that component that when you talk to a client, you really need to be there for their whole self. They're not just their legal issue. So when I went out on my own, I had different trainings, different conflict resolution and communication skills training just during my life, just for my own self, like specifically nonviolent communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. And I've been a practitioner for about 15 years of that method of communicating that really focuses on your internal sensations, which are your feelings that are pointing to your deeper universal human needs that are either getting met or not met. And I use that in every part of my practice. So my practice starts out with an empathy session of just listening, deep listening with the client about how things are for them, what they were thinking at the time of whatever the incident was, what they've thought about since, and then really helping them get clear about what those deeper needs are. And so, I think, I don't know if that answered your question, but I found myself using my communication style and these skills with the client as a priority, not as a secondary.
So you clearly developed a protocol with your clients,
right,
a sort of bedside protocol for them as you got to know them that first session. So that didn't happen kind of suddenly. You must have realized along the path that the way that, because not every lawyer does that, as you and I know, along the way you must have found that this was actually more effective for you to understand the whole person rather than going in as a traditional lawyer would and saying, right, what are the facts? Let's get to it. Who are you fighting with? Who's your conflict with, etc.
Yeah, and it's true. I actually have the process written down as my one of my processes and procedures when I go have my first meeting with a client, it's always empathy first, because people need to feel fully heard, first of all. And second, that helps the fight, flight, or freeze reaction go down.
Yeah.
And we know that, we know so much more about the brain now. And we know that having that reaction go down can help them listen and communicate much clearer and get into problem solving mode when they can't be in that mode when they're having a trauma response or a stress response. So yeah, it's definitely has developed over time. And now I kind of preach that now to other lawyers. Is, for my mediation practice, most of the mediators here in Florida just meet at mediation and start the mediation. I do a pre-conference one-on-one meeting with each party, and we, have an empathy session, and we talk about mindset and values and how they want to show up, and give them some communication tips. And then we talk a little bit about trauma and if they have any numbing responses, if they're, how they're managing their stress, and then what's worked well in the past for them about managing their stress, and the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements. And, so there's a lot that goes into that pre-conference. And I have found that my mediations are much more effective because I can craft an agenda now based having heard both parties and their tender spots and their challenges and what they deeply want, not just what they're asking for, the why behind it, right? So when I craft that agenda going into that mediation, sometimes we start with the hardest issue because I know that's what the parties need. Sometimes we start with the ones where there's agreement, so we build up the wins.
So what's the response that you're getting from people? Let's take the typical client. I'm not sure if you have a typical client, but let's say someone who comes in with a conflict of some sort, and they say, Kelly, I've got a legal problem. And then your response is to roll out the first session. What do most of your clients say when you're getting to the heart of the matter?
Well, the good thing is my marketing will weed out people that really aren't there with me in mindset, and attract people that want this experience. Yeah. So, my website is very clear about what we're going to be doing. And and I love that so much because I want to work with people that want this type of lawyering and guidance. So, and I have had clients who were more, had not seen my website. They were just referred to me. And I did have like an engineer recently that had a conflict with his neighbor, and he went right along with everything I said, there might be some things that we do today that might feel new to you, and that's okay. And if you don't want to do them, that's okay. But what I do is a lot of it is based in science. So I told them, we start out with some deep breathing, deep belly breaths. And I tell them that I do this because it's been shown that it helps your vagal nerve get back online if you're stressed. And that's kind of your rest and digest center. And we want you to feel very calm during this experience. So, if you wouldn't mind gazing gently at the floor or closing your eyes for a moment, we're going to have 3 deep breaths. And I just go from there, and they are completely, I've never had anyone walk out and leave. I think people people really want your guidance and your counsel. Yeah. And I know that what I'm asking them is not some crazy made up thing. It's based in real people's reactions over time when you're stressed. And then of course people love to feel fully heard. I mean, everyone wants to feel heard, about their experience.
And what you're saying there is something that I'm hearing a lot from people who run their own practices and are very clear about what the approach is and what their values are. What happens is that there is really great alignment between lawyer and client. So this is actually also really positive for lawyers, if they're looking to do something different from the typical, or if they're looking to branch out on their own, being really clear about the kind of law you want to practice, so that you get the kind of clients who are suited to that, actually makes
Right.
well.
Yeah. I want to be happy in my practice too.
Mm.
You know, I want to help the people that want to be helped this way. And even in my engagement agreement. So this gentleman didn't see my website, but when he engaged my services, we went through my engagement agreement, and that would have definitely included him in, because it talks about my vision and my mission and my values and my keys to satisfaction. This is how you can be the best client ever. And my constraints and boundaries. Like, here's what would trigger me to talk to you about some type of incident that I think needs to be addressed before we continue on, and how we can part ways gracefully.
Well, let's get into that, because I did the work on my vision, mission, and values, and found it really informative in terms of the type of law I wanted to practice. And I re-engineered the kind of law I was practicing towards that. So I'd love to hear about your journey finding your values and your mission and your vision.
Yeah. I've always considered myself a peace builder, no matter what I did. When I was a kindergarten teacher and in my community, we helped create our own conflict resolution team in my neighborhood. That's been running for about 8 years now. And so I've always said that I was a peace building lawyer. So my vision of the world is that there is actually going to be world peace, and there can be. I believe it 100%. There is not a doubt in my mind, and it could happen very quickly.
Yeah.
So that is definitely my vision of the world. And then how my mission, what I'm doing to work on that, is helping guide people through the most challenging conversations of their lives, so they can stay out of court and they can get their needs met, and they can have that experience of resolving a conflict with peace and effectiveness. And it's surprising for people that they can do that, because we often, have our family of origin conflict resolution style, unless we change it. And that's not always the best method, to use as you grow up.
Well, there's another thing in there that you're saying, which I think is important to pull out, particularly for people who are listening, who might think, well, I'm a lawyer. I've got my particular vision of how I want the world to be, but it's so very difficult to do something about it from where I am. Whereas you said your vision is one of the grandest that you can think of, which is world peace. And I don't know anyone who would argue with how much we would want that. But instead of going, oh my goodness, how am I going to achieve world peace? I'm a lawyer in Florida. You've got, I'm going to start where I am with the people who show up.
Mm-hmm. And, if anyone really feels overwhelmed about that, you start with yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
It has to start with inner peace, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lifelong process. It's not like, oh, I've got inner peace now,
Yeah.
But yeah, you start there, and then with your closest circles, and you can definitely bring it to your work.
It is about inner work first, which is what all of the work around values does. It gets you clearer. Like you said, it's ongoing work. It's never done. Gets you clearer on your own triggers, your own subconscious reactions, family of origin issues. Clear a lot of that out. We all spend a long time clearing out all of that. And then once you're clearer, not clear, but clearer, you can actually it will start expressing itself in the world around you, is how I would put it. And that's something I want to get at, which is the trauma response. So you do work in that area as well. And I've been talking to people around that, but we haven't really got into restorative justice on this show. So I'd love to hear about your experiences with that.
Yeah. So a few years ago, there was a workshop, and I said, oh, I want to learn about this. And there were 4 people sitting on a stage, 2 couples, and Andy and Kate Grosmaire's daughter, Ann, was shot and killed by Michael and Julie McBride's son. And they knew each other for years. The kids were young adults, but they had been dating for quite a while. And these two couples made a decision that they didn't want Conor McBride to get the death penalty. And they wanted to talk to him about the last moments of Ann's life. And they found restorative justice, which is a way of addressing harm where the person who did the harm has admitted accountability and wants to make things as right as possible. And the person who was harmed agrees they want a face-to-face meeting. And if those parameters are met, then a trained facilitator will meet with each person involved in the incident and anyone else that's impacted and talk to them about the four main questions. What happened? Who was impacted and how? What needs to be done to make things as right as possible? And what needs to be done to make sure this never happens again? And and then they they gather at a facilitated meeting and go over those questions together. And then those become an agreement that helps make things as right, repair harm as much as possible. Obviously, in a murder case, you cannot bring someone back, but their repair came in some of the things they asked Conor to do. Like when he gets out, he's going to speak about there was dating violence in the relationship. So he's going to speak to high schoolers about dating violence for a certain number of years. There's other things that they wanted him to do after he got out of prison. And also, obviously, there was prison time involved in this agreement. So it's definitely not a get out of jail free. Yeah. It's actually the hardest thing that anyone that's gone through it will tell you how difficult it is to face the person that you harmed and their family or friends or your family that you let down. But it's so transformative. In every study, it's been shown that I've ever read about restorative justice, it has shown that there's effectiveness in reducing recidivism and satisfaction of the victim and their family and the offender's family, who really is normally, just cast aside, and they actually have a say. And I believe it makes our communities much, much safer to have this available in appropriate cases. And I've done a few very serious harm cases. I worked with the president of the Florida Restorative Justice Association last year, Gretchen Casey, and we facilitated a case that the lady has let me talk about it a little bit, but she was raped by someone that she knew and made a decision that she actually didn't want to go to the police about it and didn't do anything about it as the PTSD symptoms kept getting more severe for her. She wound up dropping out of college, and she did have a therapist, thank goodness, but there was a lot of nightmares and shaking and things like that. And she found me just randomly through a web search, and we wound up working with her and contacted the person who did the harm, and he agreed to meet, and we did the whole thing by Zoom because it was during the middle of COVID. But it was several meetings with each one of them to prepare them and talk over the 4 questions. And then we met for about 4.5 hours and talked and listened to each other using those 4 questions as a guide. And then crafted an agreement that was about a 12-point agreement. He's since honored his agreement. And she has since gone back to college and graduated, and her PTSD symptoms are non-existent, she says. And it's and what is so interesting is a lot of people think restorative justice can be used for, we'll use it for teens and as a diversion program for petty crimes or whatever. But this more serious harm, it's very powerful for the serious harm cases. Because as you can imagine, you get things answered. You are late. You don't have this thought in your head with no answer from that person who impacted your life the most. So I'm a strong advocate of that in cases where it's appropriate, for sure.
I can see why. How does it fit in with the formal legal processes? So in the case of someone who's already incarcerated, how do you rehabilitate them through the restorative justice program?
Yeah.
in alignment with what the state is mandating.
Yeah, so if they're already, so a regular restorative justice process can happen in pretrial as a diversion program. It could happen, right now there's a pilot program with our Department of Corrections using it as the conditions to create conditions of probation in certain cases. So like we did a role play when we were doing some training with the Department of Correction, and role played a solicitation of prostitution case.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the person who did that, and the neighbors in the neighborhood, they're angry neighbors, and his wife, and some other people that were impacted, and came up with the conditions of probation in that circle. And I think that's gonna be a very effective pilot. I think it's gonna be wildly successful, because you were instrumental in creating the agreement that you have to honor.
Yes.
Right. So there's that. And then if they're already in prison, then there's a different name. It's called victim offender dialogue.
Okay.
And normally there's no agreement that's crafted, but but the preparation is exactly the same. And the questions, are very the same or similar questions, but a lot of times it's with people who've had a family member murdered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many, many years later, it could be, it doesn't have to be right away, but they feel like they want some questions answered. They want to talk to the person, and they can't imagine, what someone did, why someone did that. And they really want this and they don't have any closure. And I don't like that word, because there's never closure, but they don't have enough healing from the traditional criminal system.
Yes. Yes.
Because
I know, because
you're a victim. Oh my gosh. You're just like, you stand over there. You don't have to do anything. We're going to do all this.
Yeah.
And then you're never going to talk to the person. It's like, I'm never going to talk to the person that impacted my life the most and let them know what they did to me and my family. No, I want that opportunity. So we're hopeful. I mean, you have it a lot more in your system than we do right now, but it's on the rise for sure.
All right. I actually wasn't aware. I'm aware of, especially in the youth areas, that we're using it for drug crimes and so on.
Yeah.
And I think in the Curry courts, the Indigenous youth, there's been a program around that. But it's definitely something that I would love to look into more. It strikes me, Kelly, that the training of the person who facilitates this is so vital because of the powerfulness that you were talking about. Are you involved in training?
Yeah, I've done some training through the River Phoenix Center for Peacebuilding. I helped them develop their training. They're in Gainesville, Florida, and they're one of the primary trainers here in Florida. And I've actually taken 4 different trainings because I wanted to kind of compare and see the different trainings. And they are very similar, but I agree with you 100%. It's key that the facilitator speaks specifically to the person who did the harm, and make sure that like, tell me about what you were thinking at the time, and what have you thought about since, and tell me what happened. And you really look to see if there's acknowledgement that they did the harm, that they acknowledge that they did the harm. And it might not be the full harm. They might not acknowledge every, especially if it's a criminal case, every count. But if there's enough acknowledgement, and like this case I was telling you about with the woman last year, we weren't sure. We felt like there was an acknowledgement on his part, but I ran what he said, and I got permission from him to the victim, because I wanted her to help us make that decision. And normally not a gray area like that, but he was struggling with really openly saying, yes, I raped her. And she said, no, he didn't want to say it. But there was enough of like, I know what I did. Yeah, I remember the act, things like that he said, that we were pretty certain that he knew what we were talking about, and then he was acknowledging it. But we did run it by her, because you never ever want to get in a situation where you bring parties together and the person who did the harm, says, I never did that, or allegedly did the harm says, I never did that. It's just, we've had cases. There was a case in Jacksonville where the state attorney did not have the preparation. She believed in restorative justice conceptually, but she didn't understand about the trained facilitator and the preparation. The preparation meetings are key. To that, it's like anything. The preparation is going to be how important the preparation is. It's critical to making that meeting a success. So she basically brought together the person who killed the mom of this family and the family, the husband and the children, without any preparation and no facilitator. And there was an article written later, and it was a really sad and re-traumatizing event for the family. And she has since acknowledged that mistake and has her staff trained and has done the right thing. But for that one family, that has reopened all of those wounds for them. So yeah, I agree with you. It's about the preparation and the facilitators training.
How much of the community gets involved? I guess it depends on the case, but I'd love to hear about the community healing effect.
Yeah, it does. It does. We had a case where there was a 12-year-old who was out at night with his cousins, and it was around 10:30 at night, pretty late, and riding bikes and kind of throwing rocks at each other. And one of them hit a community center window and broke it. And then there was a elderly woman that was living next door and was really fearful. She didn't know what was happening. She could just see dark shapes. Didn't know they were kids, lived by herself, and called the police. And one of them was caught and arrested. And they did a diversion program, and we invited her. And we invited the grandmother who was caring for the boy and his sister.
Yeah.
And the community member who found the broken window, and then one other, did I say community member? Yeah, the community center manager.
Yeah, okay.
And one other person that worked for the community center. And the woman that called the police was able to talk about her experience, because she had been, up until that moment of the conference, or of the pre-conference with her, she thought that people were stalking, around there, burglarizing, gonna catch her, get her in her house next. They were going to come to her house and break into her house, and for several weeks had this fear building up about this event, because she didn't know it was a 12-year-old boy just goofing off with his cousins. But what was so beautiful about this conference is, you think of his life, the trajectory if he had went to juvenile prison. And at the conference, he admitted, I was goofing around with my cousins. I didn't mean it. I apologized to the lady. He offered himself to come in at 6:00 at night every night, but he didn't have a watch. She offered to buy him the watch. Then she became friends with the grandmother who lived 3 or 4 houses down. She's like, oh, I've seen you around, and the grandmother is like, oh yeah, I think I know your cousin. And, at the event, now this elderly woman not only feels much safer than she did a few weeks before and understands what actually happened, but she has helped this boy get the watch. She's now has a neighbor that's watching out for her.
Yes.
And he is now, and the community center manager got to tell about how sad she was and how taken aback she was, and just really shocked and a little frightened too about why this happened. And he got to talk to her about that. And then she asked him, what are your hobbies? I know you ride a bike. Tell me about your bike. And would you be willing to start a bike club with me in the community center? Or at the community center. And so he started a bike club with her and started saying, well, if we do this, we can get badges for this, and, organized it. So, it's that's what I want to see in my community. That's
ripples in the right direction. So when you compare to, for example, you're saying what could have happened to that 12-year-old, the ripples have gone completely the other way, and you've built community.
Right.
It's just one of the most beautiful stories.
It is so nice. And then, and I love that the elderly woman who was alone is not fearful now, and has built some connections with people in her neighborhood. So, yeah.
So I've spoken to collaborative practitioners who've done collaborative divorce. I've spoken to collaborative practitioners who've done business disputes. What I'm really getting out of this conversation is not so much the collaborative side, but the restorative side, and what you're talking about on the criminal law side of things. And it's actually what my next question was going to be was, there's another aspect of change that you're talking about here. How would you encourage people who might be getting into the criminal justice system as lawyers to move this forward?
I think if they're in the system, that's a beautiful thing. You can make so much change in a system. You don't even realize how powerful you are when you're in a system. I made some big changes at Department of Children and Family just by talking to the right people, and yeah, talk to the right people, start asking, can we get a training on this? I have a perfect case for this. Can I use this in this way? And in Florida, it's fairly simple to use restorative justice if you want to. It falls under a pre-plea agreement conference, which is already in the rules. So if you have a case, you can use it right there if you so desire. But yeah, and I think that there's an incredible power to change and grow a system and nudge a system towards connection and compassion. Just by asking your supervisor, may I do this? I just found out about this. Oh, look at this report on it. This looks very effective and cost effective as well.
Yeah. What do you see as the future for your practice in Florida? And what are you working on right now?
Yeah, one of my big missions is to expand the idea of mediation. So I would love to see every mediator have a one-on-one pre-conference meeting with each client, each party to a conflict, and use all of that training that we have to take a certain amount of mediator training every few years. So we are growing in our conflict resolution and communication skills as mediators professionally. We have to, which is a good thing, but use that in those pre-conferences to help guide, help teach, give a little tips and pointers for people, help them with their mindset or their visioning of what this could be like, so that when they get to the mediation, they have that one successful experience of resolving the conflict with connection. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it could be this way. I could actually resolve this conflict. Oh, I was so nervous, and they have that experience, because this isn't just like a one and done for someone, especially a divorce mediation or any mediation, really. This is something they're going to look back on this entire experience, their whole life, and think about that experience. And if we can help them get their fight, flight, or freeze response down ahead of the meeting so that they can think clearly and problem solve and use that executive functioning, and then they know where they want to go, and they feel like there's a collaboration aspect to this instead of me against this other person, then we could change lives, not just resolve legal issues. So that's really one of my biggest goals. I'm speaking we have an annual conference for mediators here in Florida once a year, and I'm gonna be speaking about pre-conferences and how essential they are. And I hope they do that. I'd also like, on a financial level, a financial aspect, to help people move to a flat fee instead of an hourly rate.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on this show. Yeah, the hourly rate is a culture killer.
It is, and
a relationship killer between lawyer and client.
I want people to have certainty when they work with me, and they know what they're going to get. And then for me, it's like, I give you one price, and then there's an unlimited amount of time we can talk. We can email each other. We can call each other. You can just update me, whatever makes you feel comfortable and moving forward in the best way for you. And that's what a flat fee does for me. That's how I use that model, is that I will do whatever I need to get you to your goal. And you don't have to worry about 6-minute increments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely those two things. I still support the Florida Restorative Justice Association. I'm no longer the executive director. Someone more talented than me is in that role now, but I definitely support them and talk about that. I just helped the Florida Bar create a continuing legal education on restorative justice. It was a 3-hour. We spent about a year, and it was planning it, and it was about 3 hours. Over 300 attorneys attended. And then at the end, when we said, okay, this is complete now, we're going to stay on and talk a little bit, 100 people stayed on for an extra hour. So I was so heartened to see that. And we had every circuit in Florida, every judicial circuit was represented in that CLA. So that's going to happen here. I mean, it's happening in pockets, but the rise of restorative justice is definitely palatable. You can see it. And that those two couples that I talked to you about when I first learned about restorative justice, they were the guests of honor, and they spoke again about their story and how much restorative justice meant to them in their healing and in their moving on with their, they are able to have a happy life now, and they're not stuck in that worst moment of their life.
Yeah.
And I think if you're victim centered, if you're a state attorney, that's the prosecuting attorney here in Florida, and you say that you're for victims, that's one of the best things that you can do, is offer that in appropriate cases. So those are some of the things I'm working on.
Kelly, that's remarkable. I think I need to go back a step. When I said to you that some people listening might think, oh, well, how can I make a change? And you just have to start where you are and make little changes. I have to take that back and say that you're making big changes.
Well, I mean, yeah, and anyone could do that. Once you find your passion and you have something that you want to do, find the people that are going to support that with you. And what happened for me with the Florida Restorative Justice Association is I went to a national conference and met a whole bunch of people from Florida. And we all said, oh my gosh, you're doing that? Oh, I want to do that. I want to learn about what you're doing. And then it just evolved right from there organically. And people will support you and step up and help with that. And then the other thing is that Life After All program that I just started. And it was really based on mediated divorces, where I would follow up with the clients and finding that there was a group of people who were not able to move, were not moving forward in their life. And they were very stuck, like to the point of not opening bills, and, because they had never done the budget in the family, and just really getting stuck in where they were in their worst moments, and feeling like we could build a community around people,
supporting them through their worst fears.
Yep.
Just by showing up and showing them that there's a step that you can take forward, and stepping through it with them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I met these other women that are these professional women. I thought, oh my gosh, if I was stuck, I might need to take a walk every day, and maybe a personal trainer, a motivational personal trainer could say, hey, why don't you get out and walk today and see just 20 minutes, and then a financial advisor, like, hey, there's a woman financial advisor on our team that loves to teach people how to budget and loves to make it fun and really just help them. So I found, it was just people that were in my circle anyway. And I called them up and I said, do you want to do this work with some women, a small group of women? And they were all on board right away. So yeah, just little things. Yeah, I think they can make big changes and everyone can,
I think that's a beautiful note for us to wrap up on, Kelly. It's been really inspiring. And I think anyone listening to this or watching this is going to feel the same. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And for
oh my gosh. Well, thank you
all
so
that you're
much for
contributing
spreading the
to.
word. Yeah, you too. You too, really. Any attorney wants to talk to me, they can easily reach out, or anyone, really, just reach out. We all need support and inspiration, and I'm inspired by what other people are doing.
I'll have
So
all of your details on the site. I'll put them up, your website, kellymcgrathlaw.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.